and gentlemen, welcome back to another rousing rendition of what we like to call the BREADren podcast. That's BREADren like bread, BREADREN, because we always talking about our bread and we always getting bread. And when I say we, I always must give a shout out and honor to my fellow co-host, Dr. Jamu Loving, PhD, and Destrian Wells. How are you gentlemen doing this evening?
Doing great.
Man, outstanding, bro.
That's a blessing and a bet. As we always do, definitely want to give a shout out to everybody and say welcome to season 2. If you haven't listened to episode 1 of season 2, which is episode 10, go listen to it. It's live right now. It's how we bringing in the new theme. I guess we're gonna call it for this season, which is we're gonna focus a little bit more on the personal side of things. But we still doing what we normally do. If you're not familiar with what that is, go back and listen to season 1, episodes 1 through 9. But in true BREADren fashion, we always raise our glasses. So we'll start with, we'll start with DJ. I mean, if you know, you know. But for kicks, what's in the glass, my man?
Again, man, consistency is key. Tonight we're continuing the tradition. In honor of Nipsey Hussle, man, the marathon continues, and I will continue to drink this Hennessy with a splash of Coke for the duration of the season, unless otherwise deemed necessary by either Hennessy Masters Blend or White Hennessy, which I plan to reintroduce to the crowd very soon.
That's okay. It's gonna be a special day.
We got a forecast.
When they hear something different, oh my goodness, it's gonna be a problem, man. People are gonna fall out.
I don't think there will be anything different. Doctor,
I'll take a picture of the bar right now, man.
Yeah, Dr. Levy.
Oh, okay. So yeah, in observance of the recent tragedy in Kentucky with the Jim Beam factory catching on fire, I decided to go ahead this time and instead of doing my other choice in whiskeys, I chose Jim Beam bourbon. It's nice, man. I'm enjoying it. Jim Beam. So Jim Beam and Coke Zero, because I'm watching my figure.
Oh my God.
All righty then. Well, you know what? Welcome to the dog side, because I just poured out the last of my Jim Beam bottle, to which I will follow that up with the Bastille 1789 that I'm trying to finish off.
Will you?
And I also have a Golden Pilsner.
Oh.
And do you also have the 89 Fleetwood Brougham Cadillac?
Indeed, gentlemen. Wait. Cheers to a wonderful conversation, knowledge being dropped and bread being broken.
Cheers, man.
And the Jim Beam goes down.
Yeah.
But last week we talked about creating balance, which was, a good foundation for what we're trying to, make as, like I said, the theme for this season. But tonight we're going to tackle a subject that is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, and it's becoming more of a reality for some, is the side hustle. And we're going to kind of look at, can you side hustle your way to financial freedom? And what you're currently doing, is it a business or is it a side hustle? We're going to kind of get into it and see, which side do you fall into, and some steps to take to increase productivity, if you will. But Dr. Lovin, I'm going to throw it to you to give us your usual outline.
Okay. Well, in terms of side hustling, or really anything that you have going, the questions you have to ask yourself are, why am I doing this? Right. And I think the reason you have to ask yourself that is a lot of times with any extra work where you're trying to get some money, I've created expenses for myself. So, my first little question was, hey, why the side hustling then? Are you hustling to pay for things that are too expensive? Should you restructure your expenses? And then if you're in a couple, and so sort of harkening back to last week and a lot of the relational aspects that we talked about, setting expenses to one income and why you might do something like that as you are thinking about side hustling within your overall framework of getting goals accomplished and all of the season 1 stuff we talked about. And then, I'd really like to hear we're going to talk about some inventive sort of side hustles and opportunities that are out there, and, what you should think about when you're trying to decide, besides your regular job, what's going to be that next thing that you do to try to bring in some money, and how do you pick the thing to do? And then this one is always one of my favorites, and it's making your money hustle for you. So investing and then creating passive income in the future. So not only are you hustling, but the fruit that you have borne in terms of the investments that you can now put away, or the savings that you can use to garner you interest, how well are those things working for you, and what things are out there that can make them work better? Well, we got a nice little start here.
Oh, most definitely. And as anybody knows, we usually we like a PK exposed, and people that don't know what a PK is, a preacher's kids. We laid out the points like a sermon, and we may not hit them all, but you're going to get the message. But DJ, I'm going to throw it to you, but the thing that I definitely want to throw your way is, as far as the distinction between the two and the power that it speaks into being, is if you consider it a side hustle, then, mentally that's all it can be. But if you look at your side hustle in terms of it's an actual business, then it has the potential to grow. But I wanted to throw it to you with that basis, and for you to kick us off, because you had some points that you wanted to make off rip. But it was just basically making that big distinction between the two, and how powerful it is on, not necessarily categorizing, but making sure the distinction of, okay, what I'm doing, you may look at it as a side hustle, but for me, it's a business. Because we all know that can be one of those detrimental things. We talked about it last season, of just how people perceive things and how you perceive them on your own. So that's the point I'm going to throw to you, but go ahead, you can take it.
Well, I think what you make is you make a great point. I think Dr. Lovin also very astutely pointed out numerous things that we need to focus on and address. One of the first things that I like to talk about quickly and briefly is this: words matter. Presentation matters. The manner in which we present ourselves and the way in which we leverage our words, they matter. And as much as we may think that they don't, they do. So when you tell someone, for example, I'll use you, Arthur. I'll deviate from what my planned comments may have been, but if you tell me, hey, I do websites on the side, I'm going to let's say I have a legitimate business and I'm serious about what it is I want to do, I'm going to immediately think that the time and attention that you're going to give me is limited. So your words matter. I'm also going to think that if you're going to diminish the value of your brand or your business or hustle or whatever you want it to be, I shouldn't value it as much as maybe I thought I should have. So the way in which we present things matter very, very much so, and that they're significant because it is the first thing that folks see or hear. Maybe they find your web presence or not, but when they speak to you, they have a living, breathing example of what the experience is like when dealing with you. So expectation and presentation is critical. The difference between a side hustle and a business comes down to very simple terms. Is there a plan in place? Can you monetize that plan? And I'm not saying that everyone has to, because maybe you have something that's for a humanitarian effort, but can you scale it? If you can't answer those questions, you have some issues. There's some other things that you kind of alluded to or talked about when Dr. Loving made some comments, and you made a few too. If you're in a relationship, you have a partner, as your partner on board with that plan, because it matters how your partner and the people that are surrounding you present that as well. It's the same thing. Everyone is a walking referral. They're a marketing tool for you. So I think one of the things that we really have to really be conscious of and cognitive of when we're going into a space where we're presenting ourselves as a business, do I have a plan? Do I have a means by which I deliver? Is there a standard operating procedure? Are things, like Dr. Loving has said in the past, are they automated and turnkey in order for me to deliver the things to you that I've promised or said that I would in my mission statement on my website or what have you? A business looks very similar to that. A side hustle is piecemeal. I make money from time to time doing this arbitrarily, and people think I'm fairly good at it. Now, I'm not knocking anyone who does that, but at some point you have to make your mind up. You have to transition. And in order to transition, you have to put together a plan. And if that plan doesn't include how you monetize it or give it back to humanity for a greater cause, you're really not doing much except hustling. Now, you made the comment in your opening remarks around the difference between the two and how we may see them, but it's more important that our listeners know how that they see those two things, because it's very, on a frequent basis, someone may think that they have a business that's really a side hustle. And if you can't legitimize yourself by showing articles of incorporations, if you can't legitimize yourself by saying that I'm a limited liability corporation or I'm incorporated or S corp or what have you, and I file taxes with the state, the city, I'm recognized, etc., for all intents and purposes, as well as you may be operating, you do have a hustle. A business is mutually recognized by the state in which it operates in, as well as potentially surrounding bodies. So there are some steps that you need to take to make sure you legitimize yourself, so that, number one, you're achieving the maximum protection for yourself, but you're also achieving the maximum tax benefit as well. So those are two things that you want to make sure you're doing. That's the difference between the hustle and the business. The hustle will bring you income. The business will bring you security, tax savings, earnings, and also an ability to become a pillar of the community that people mutually recognized as legitimate. And it's not knocking the side hustle, but you need to really understand the benefits to legitimizing yourself and becoming a business.
Yeah. Most definitely. Doc, I'm gonna throw it to you, but I gotta always throw my curveball into it. But real quick, hustle is a verb, force to move hurriedly or unceremoniously in a specified direction. Kind of like defining phenomena and making it act in the desired manner. I just always like to, throw those Easter eggs in, as they call them sometimes. But let's go ahead and knock one out the park, Doc, and I'm gonna throw it to you. Is scalability. Because we all know that, a good business can always, a great business, a good business, an amazing business, an awesome business, most definitely can come from a side hustle. You can start, braiding hair in the living room and, work your way up, and now you own the shop. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and knock this one out the park. Scalability, Doc.
Yeah, and that, I don't want, because BREADren is talking about things that this is the direction you want to go. And sometimes for some people, depending on where you are in the overall process, man, that could seem like it's an ocean away. All right, so I want to break it down to the simplicity for you, right? Sometimes it starts with just a hustle, man, a gig somewhere, anything that you can do that is actually bringing in income, in excess of what it's costing to do. I love my folks that are rapping, but it's not necessarily even a hustle yet if you can't bring money in doing it. That's, it's not that there's anything wrong with that. It may, hobbies are great, and I'm not saying it's even just a hobby. It might be a business eventually that's just starting out in its infancy. But I'm saying when you're talking about a hustle and what you're going to do with it, most of the time you're talking about bringing some income in, and a lot of times these hustles come out of the feeling of at least initially necessity, because you put yourself in a position where your bills are too high for your current level of income with your regular job. And so now you got to do something to bring in some additional money just to meet bills. And I would always encourage you, we have other episodes that we talk about this, but, recognize that in the long term, nothing is fixed. You can switch anything. You don't have to have the same type of car payment that you have. You don't have to have the same high rent amount that you have. Those things can be changed over time, right? And also your income is something that can change. You might make a certain amount from your job, but then as we're talking about here, whether it's a side hustle that you develop into a business, something else where you just are starting out, anyway, you're making additional money to help make ends meet, but then go beyond that to potentially put yourself in a position where you're not having to do additional activity to make ends meet. So part of that is making sure you fix your expenses and understand how much you can spend versus how much you have to bring in to accomplish the things that are going now. Also, to feed your dream and your business that you have in mind going forward, right? So a lot of this is like, okay, you're evolving towards this whole process of having your own company, having your own business, and being in a position now where you can start to make decisions with what it is that you have. And so I didn't want to lose that just as we were developing and going forward in the whole evolution of the story. But it's important to recognize that just because you don't have it all figured out right now doesn't mean you can't start your way on the process. A lot of times people suffer from grandiosity. You hear it in every sort of realm, right? I'm gonna start going to church when I feel like I'm living right? I'm gonna go to the doctor when this ailment goes away and I'm starting to feel better. I'm going to start saving money when I get some sort of windfall, right? All of these things instead of just getting the process started. And so I want to encourage you to, get off the couch at least and start moving towards where you want to go so that you can develop what it is that you want to do and go forward from there, right? And as well as think about, hey, let me make sure I'm not put myself in a position where I can't control my expenses. And, that brings me to the topic, and that was the question of scalability. Once you get to the point that you've built something out where you started to think about a great idea, you have to recognize that your time is limited, right? You only have 24 hours in a day, and you only have your limited productivity within those hours. And if this is a second job for you, those hours are even limited. So now you have to think about, what is it that I can do to make sure that I am most effective with the time that I have? And is this the type of business where I can lend some effort, some time, and then get a little bit more out of it? It's depending on the type of side sort of business you choose, that's going to be more or less possible. But you have to think about automation. I know I bring this up in every time we, in pretty much every sort of direction that you can bring it up, but it's true. Like, to the extent that you organize and schedule things, right, and sequentially figure things out, now you can put them in a position where you automate them and you save yourself some time. So once you figure out precisely what makes your business tick, you can make it more efficient and you can leverage your efforts because of it. So some things might not seem readily scalable at the onset, but as you learn more about what it is that you're doing, man, always seek to automate, always seek to look to give yourself more time to now pursue the next most productive thing in your overall business. And so that would be my sort of direction on that. I know I moved around a little bit on that topic, but
no, you you did what you do and you do it well. DJ, I want to throw it to you because we gonna help round this out. Because Doc just knocked scalability at the park, but along with that scalability is something very tangible that people can do, which is, you mentioned it, I believe, which is the business model. So I want you to speak a little bit towards the point of taking a hustle and applying the business model to a hustle in terms of making it scalable, so that people can see the vision themselves of, okay, this is what I'm doing right now. I cut hair in the basement, just because that's what I'm available to do right now. And we say, we're not knocking nobody's hustle, because that's what a hustle is. You are doing something to get to a direction, and we just having a conversation to say, okay, you making money and your bills paid. Let's get beyond that, because we've always said that the goal was financial freedom and wealth, and community building and collaboration, and all of these basic fundamentals of just creating a utopia of utopia. Look it up if you don't know what it is, but it's just overall well-being for everybody involved in the surroundings. But let's apply a business model to these hustles, so that people can see their hustle be scaled into a business, because some people may not have that vision. Some people may, like Doc said, think it's overwhelming. Or just like people, just like myself, I'm a procrastinator. I'm not afraid to say it, where it's like, I'll start doing this when this happens. I'll start doing this when this happens. It's kind of like you set this alarm, but that time don't come. Especially not, you know what I'm saying? Because you deliberately set it to something that's kind of
based on your
unattainable.
comfort.
Exactly.
You said it based on comfort.
I'll save money one side, like Doc said, once I hit this windfall. But that windfall is kind of off. It's kind of off into the sunset. You can see it, but it ain't nothing you drifting up on, because right now you sitting there and ain't no wind blowing in your sailboat. But so that's the point I'm gonna throw to you, the angle that I'm gonna throw to you. Go ahead, man.
Well, I think we said things based on comfort for a number of reasons, but for the sake of responding to the specific question, if you take a opportunity and evaluate how people do business and why they do business, people really only do business for a few reasons, and most other things are ancillary. Number one is emotionally something connects to them to choose your brand or product over another. For all intents and purposes, the best products are mostly the same. They all do the same thing. Nothing differentiates the other except the message. So one of the things that I would encourage, our entrepreneurs, our side hustlers, our folks that are trying to establish and grow businesses or brands, what is your message? Does it resonate with people? And does it speak to who you are and what you want your brand to be about? Because whether you know it or not, you have a message in the marketplace, and it's saying something. A large problem that I see is that brands are saying things that they don't want to say, or they're aligning themselves or supporting things that they don't want to support. If you're a go green type of person, you probably shouldn't be affiliated with certain things. If you are a socially conscious and responsible person, firearms and tobacco is probably not your thing. But hey, by the same token, if you are an organization or individual or whomever who says, you know what, I fully support XYZ amendment, and I think the right to bear arms is front and center for me, and I want to be in front of that, and you have every opportunity to get in front of that and support it. I think that we need to align ourselves with issues that are important to us, because the way of the world today is highly politicized, And if you are not willing to take a stance, people don't trust you. I don't. I want to know where you stand. How do you really feel? I'd rather make a decision purchasing something bad, quote unquote, understanding that it's something bad, than to find out 3 months later. Tell me where you stand. And I think by doing so, you can carve out a lane for yourself. So one of the things about brands, businesses versus hustles, and just ideas that haven't come to fruition is just an understanding of who you are and what you are and who you're deciding to be those things too. If you want to get into business terms, some would call that marketing. What's your niche market? What's your product? What's your place? What's your people? You understand where we're going with this. But when you boil it down to a basic human level is, do you relate to me, and do you have a message that resonates with me? And do you have a product that I would be even remotely willing to consider? Because everyone has something now. And that is the thing. In order to be competitive, you have to present yourself. And that's unique and different from yesteryear. The product was the delineating factor. Now it's the person. So if you're not a person that can differentiate yourself, are you willing to have a business, or do you just have a hustle? And if you want to move from hustle to business, how vulnerable are you willing to be in front of people in order that they know your story, so that you can impact their lives in a way that they'll connect to your brand and choose you and your brand over everything else? Because from a genuine perspective, most people struggle with that. But from a marketing perspective, major corporations and companies don't have a problem with doing that. They have an entire budget to, analyze what it is you like to see, want to hear, etc. But there is power and impact in individuals, companies, people that are out here with their side hustles that want to impact communities and grow their brands and do business and do better. They have to be willing to compete on that level and say, if I'm vulnerable as an individual, it means more to the everyday person than it does when a brand does it. And for me, it does. I just want to know who you are. Why should I listen to you, and why should I purchase from you? I'll choose you over a major brand 9 times out of 10 every time, as long as you're professional and you're meeting the mark. And that's another thing we have to realize, but we can go into that a little bit later. Just being diverse doesn't guarantee you anything. Being diverse and standing out actually puts you on an island where you now have to perform in my opinion, at a higher level. So if you're not meeting the mark, it's more glaring than it is if someone else is not. So those are all things to consider, I think, Arthur. And, I'd be interested to hear what Jamu has to say about that as well. We tend to agree on some things and disagree on others in this space.
Go ahead, Dr. Levitt. I'm gonna give you your chance for rebuttal.
No, I honestly, I think in this case, there's a lot of agreement that I have on. So when you think about what makes you want to buy something, right? A lot of times it's a story, man. It's something
emotive stories.
Yeah, it's something that sort of connects with you. And I think anytime you buy something, there at least is some small connection that happens there. And so to the extent that you can reach out through what it is that you are doing and tell your story in a very quick, succinct way to people who might be sympathetic towards it, not just sympathetic, but also might just identify with that story or feel a certain way, like, oh, it feels opulent. You look at Creed, the House of Creed that makes colognes. They have all sorts of stories about the historic relevance of their family. If you look at some of these producers of fine cognacs and wines, they all have a story about their house and how they built their vineyard and who the historical figures are. Why? Well, a lot of it is because it's true and they're proud of it, but they also publicize it because people often identify with these human stories, and they either see it as something they can, personally relate to in the present or in the past, or they find them aspirational stories as to, how they would like their family to live. And so they drink these cognacs from these fine houses or these wines from these fine houses and in hopes to connect with that sort of feel too and create that sort of vibe in their lives. And hopefully, if they're forward looking, put themselves in a position so that their families can live similarly, right? So at the end of the day, business in terms of sales is about creating some level of connection from one person to another person or a group of people. And so BREADren mentioned diversity in that. And there's just been a lot of research on diversity and how it can actually positively impact revenue growth and profitability in a company. And we can dig all into the balance sheets and income statements, or we can just go ahead and keep it simple like this. Like, the world is made up of lots of different people with lots of different things that are important to them, but we can only make so many different types of products and services, right? And so when you think about what it is that you bring to the table as a producer, you have your ability to make a quality product or service, and then you have the ability to sell that and translate to the people who might be buying it that, hey, this is something that you ought to buy. This is something that's worthwhile as a product. This is something that we respect you as a consumer, and we respect you as, I don't know, a fellow cohabitant of the planet in some ways, depending on what the actual product is. But at the end of the day, the message is something that makes you say, I want to be a part of this whole process. I want to own the product. I want to have the service. I'm willing to be identified with working with this particular company. And that's another thing BREADren brought up. Okay, so now in this day and age, if you can make the wrong type of missteps in terms of, you pick a T-shirt that looks like a black person in blackface with black big red lips or something like that, and you end up offending a large swath of the population.
Damage control and public relations.
Yeah, and you might not have even thought that you were doing something. You definitely didn't think of this in I'm trying to insult black people way. And you thought in your own mind that you might have been enlightened and not even recognize that something is, within your mind, it's just a black face with red lips. But without proper context, without the right cultural empathy. I saw a brother named Andrew McCaskill, full disclosure, friend of mine from Morehouse College, who is an executive with Nielsen, and he's talked about empathy. And empathy on a corporate level is one of those things that can work out in your benefit tremendously, right? Because if you have the right type of diversity within your group, you can keep from making decisions that make you look like you're culturally insensitive or insensitive to people in other ways, or at worst a bully. But then also you will have within your team the ability to express yourself positively to a lot of the influential groups that are out there, right? And so as we think about, how do we make our message complex, but also something that people besides our closest friends can identify with and receive, and say, hey, how do we do something that's scalable, that could be huge if we allow it to? It's all about having those elements in place where we can be diverse in our thought process. We can be flexible in terms of the type of the money that we bring in and from whom and how and leveraging technology and all of these things, right? All of it sort of plays in there, but you have to be forward looking in order to make that happen for yourself. Right? There's no Unfortunately, there's no shortcut past each of these steps that we've been talking about. You have to be willing to go through them. And, if you're a procrastinator like I am, you can mess around and end up taking a whole bunch of time going through each of these steps before you ever get anywhere unless recognize how important the gift is that you have to give to other people, how impactful it can be for you, but also for the other people who might be receiving what it is that you bring to the table.
But that's the thing, though, right? Is I know, like you said, you admitted to it, I admitted to it. A lot of us are in that space where we see a vision, we can see it beyond, the current state, but we just, that first step is just like, oh man. But let's talk tangibles. Let's talk tangibles here. Let's say
let's pause there for a second.
But hold on.
Let's pause
because I know where you finna go, but I want to throw a tangible in there. Let's say you baking cakes, and for a later date we can definitely dive into the conversation. Like we got a lot of side topics we can dive into, like accessibility versus convenience when it comes to scalability of your side hustle becoming a business. Because let's say you baking cakes and you making custom cakes or custom cupcakes or custom lollipops, because me personally, I know a lot of people, and I know both of you all do as well, a lot of people who bake cakes and things now, and it's like they're good at it. They can make you a cake shaped like any cartoon character, anything you want, really nice cakes. Cake Boss ain't the only one, but that only comes around every time there's a client, there's a job. So how do you that's accessibility, where it's like Doc was saying, you got that emotive connection where you almost got a limited edition of something. This is one of one. So people are going to get it because it's one of one. And on top of it is good, the quality and all of that goes along with, running a good business. But what about the convenience factor? If you know how to bake cakes, just bust out a couple of pound cakes. Now people know whenever we just got pound cakes going. And everybody loves a good pound cake. Let me tell you, if you meet somebody that don't like a good pound cake, judge them, okay? Judge them, because you know what I'm saying. I'm just being real, but like that's the kind of direction I wanted to steer the conversation, DJ. And I know you can pick it up. Where I dropped it is, let's talk about some tangible, serious steps, because that's a step that doesn't take that much of a push for people, where, the people that are procrastinators like ourselves, where it's like, I could, especially when we talking tangible goods. That's another big difference. Like in that scenario, we talking about somebody that's making a tangible product. That, in itself is a little bit easier than, say somebody who's in the service, in a service-oriented business. But go ahead and pick it up where I dropped it, man.
I mean, it would be great if I were to sit here and talk about things like, hey, can you evaluate what you make per unit cost, and could you, do X, Y, Z? But really, it comes down to a few things up front, whether I think a person even can continues to do things like this or not. Number one, is it in demand? You have to have people asking you for this, and I think that's one of the things that we often omit as business people. What someone considers critical mass and what you do is different. So if I'm a business owner and I've been a business owner and I know that I need X amount of units to achieve this profit margin or whatever, I look at things a lot differently. You see, a person with a pure passion they look at the work. And I think that's in its rawest, purest form. They just look at the work. It's not about the money. It's not about the margins. It's about the work. You probably have a person in their best state at that point. If you can keep a person in that state and give them or partner them with somebody that'll worry about the rest of that stuff, you have a dangerous combination then, because you'll have someone that's looking after the business interest, but someone that's purely following the passion. It's very rare that you get that to happen. So to answer the question that you're asking, what you typically get is one person trying to manage both. And that's difficult because your dreams are being torn down right in front of you, right? So it's, hey, I just really want to impact people. I want to help as many people as I can. And then you got a me, you got a Dr. Loving, you got an author, you got a 4046 Holdings telling them, hey, listen, you can't take this person on as a client because, it's X amount of hours and it's not really yielding the benefit that you think. That person could be concerned with the social impact. So I think one of the things that we need to do, AJ, is we need to get beyond looking at just money. We need to evaluate both the economic impact and the social impact that we might be able to have with whatever initiative or effort that we're undertaking. The reason being is that a lot of times those things are mutually beneficial and they're tied together in ways that we don't see for years to come. Years. From a policy standpoint, from a policy standpoint, we'll just leave it right there. From a policy standpoint, those things are tied together. And if we don't try to address those things simultaneously, we're not even checking one box. We're just leaving something half done. And as business owners or people that are moving from the side hustle to the business, I think that's a valuable lesson to learn and a real place to start is by understanding, hey, if I have this side hustle and I really want to make it a business, what is the economic impact that I can have, but also what is the social impact that I can have? Because you may be able to change your community in terms of giving people jobs, but you may be also able to change your local landscape in terms of how politicians deal with a specific demographic or area, because you demand power and you have a voting bloc behind you that's going to listen to what you say. So there are a lot of things inherently that are built into transforming your side hustle to a business that we don't always associate with. And some of those things also include economic and political power, because it's not just about you, it's about the demographic that looks like you, the community in which you grow up in, the community that you earn those funds in, and then what are you going to do with those additional funds to either reinvest in that community or move forward?
Yeah.
And to kind of close things out to what you said earlier, it is important in every shape, form, and fashion that we are aware of our responsibility as we matriculate through these cycles of going from, okay, I got a little hustle. I won't even say a little hustle because that's disrespectful. I got a hustle going on.
There you go.
And I'm moving forward. I'm trying to figure out how to do things. All right, I want to legitimize my business. Just because you are not in a position to legitimize your business on July 15th, 2019, does not mean that you don't have a business. It means that you're in process or you're in transition. And I want to be clear about that because I don't want the indication to come across that if you somehow don't have proper paperwork today that you'll never have it or you're not recognized. No, your efforts are recognized.
Yeah, we definitely real quick, I definitely want to make sure we make the distinction that we're not telling people that, because you don't have a business license hanging up in your mama's living room where you braiding hair right now, that you are not a legitimate business. Right. This is a process. It's not overnight. It's definitely not overnight. And if it's overnight, go, measure twice, cut once. You need to go back. But I want for both of y'all, because you said something that triggered a thought, and this is this is how I know where we at in the program right now, because you triggered a serious thought, and it may be something that we don't all agree on. We may partially agree on it. But in terms of the side hustle in the business, like you said, let's go ahead and throw the side off of it. Let's just talk about a hustle. And for those surefire hustles that people got, like, hey, I need the rent money. I got a hustle that's going to get me the rent money. But that day comes where your hustle is not reliable.
Yeah.
If you are fully reliant on your hustle for something, whatever that something is, my best advice for you is to turn that hustle into a business.
Right.
I don't know if we all will agree on that or not, but I'm gonna further take it out is if you know you got a hustle that's paying your rent every month, like clockwork.
Buy your house.
Right. Exactly. Let's scale it. Get yourself a house.
Right.
But I'm not ready for home ownership. Okay, fine.
That's
but
fine. Pay your debt
based
off.
on what you got going right now, that can be scaled up, and now you can have
Or
surplus,
exactly.
savings, all of the stuff. All we basically want to do here is, you know what I'm saying, we want to be, I'll save it for the after show, but we want to be that, you know, that boost. I can call it something else, and I'll tell you what it is later, but we want to be that boost. We want to be that push that says, next step, here's a better way of doing it, because right now you're looking at the door being closed. We gonna put a peephole right here in a small window. Here's the way you can get through it. Well, go ahead.
AJ, check it out. So most people know that the door is open, and if they told me that they didn't, I'd tell them they were lying, because when I talk to them, you know, I am them and they are me. I know that they know that this door is open, because when I hear them, I hear multi-million-dollar ideas every day. The problem is we have so many visionaries in our community and not enough strategic thinkers. And we have to move from a place of just having a vision, and we either need to do one of two things. We need to surround ourselves with people who have the requisite skills to strategically implement our ideas and our vision, or we need to develop it ourselves, because so many things are falling by the wayside from the simple idea that it's going to cost too much to do it. I hear it all the time. You know, I'm fortunate in a sense to be surrounded by people like you guys who, you know, we don't have limitless resources, but we definitely pool the resources that we have and try to figure out ways to have more. But everybody's not in that situation. So for the person that's in a position or a predicament right now where you have a multi-million-dollar idea and you're just struggling, how do I strategically bring this to fruition? How do I get this in front of the right people? How do I develop a plan to do this 1 year, 3 year, 5 years from now? That's what we're here for. That's the whole purpose of this endeavor, this podcast, this medium. It is to facilitate change in the communities in which people that look like us, but also amongst people who understand the condition that we're in. And therefore, you don't have to look like me for me to be willing to assist or help you. And that's an important factor, because we have to have allies. You have to look beyond your demographic and see skill sets instead of color. You have to look beyond your demographics and see skill sets instead of preference in terms of sexuality. You have to look beyond that. If you can't do that, you're not going to win in the society today. You legitimately will never have a business. If that business is not culturally and socially responsive, you're losing.
People will learn, and businesses will learn that if wind gets out that, you know, you don't agree with certain things or you against just one thing, you will find out just how big that group or that, you know, that demographic, even in, you know, in turn, if you, simple example, and we won't use anything, you know, in the realm, but let's say you a business and you say that you don't want people to eat pizza to come to your business. You'll find out just how large the group of pizza eaters and people that support them are. And you'll pretty much cut yourself off. Yeah. But Dr. Lovett, go ahead.
Yeah.
And you can go ahead and start wrapping up your point, because it's about that time to get to the after show now.
I was gonna say, and you know where I go with it, and it's always the same place, man. And it's at the end of the day, people are more important than things.
Woo! every time you say it from here on out, starting probably the next episode, I'm a procrastinator, so I'm going to push it off to the next time. But every time we hear the phrase people over things, I want people to take a drink, and I'm going to add some horns or something. Confetti sounds or something.
That DJ Envy, like that.
Yeah.
Hey, man, look. It's true. People are more important than things. Look at all we've talked about, right? In terms of creating a connection, it's always a people connection, right? It's something that connects with the human side of the individual, not just some analytical, number-driven thing. At the end of the day, when we're talking about moving things to the next level, it's about automating things to make it so that you, the individual, the person with the imagination and the ability to think on a higher level, you're free because of that technology and automation to do that next biggest and best thing. And when you're talking about being diverse and open, you're talking about welcoming all sorts of people. And in this day and age, if you come down on the side of, oh, I have biases against certain people, and I feel like I should be able to treat them differently, or I don't have a problem with them being treated differently, then you do have a problem in this day and age. Because if you're trying to do a side hustle, a business, a international global corporation, it doesn't matter what you're trying to do. If you show yourself to be the type of individual who is potentially a bigot, then you will have a whole lot of folks, including myself, who don't want to do business with you, okay? And are, in many cases, extremely principled about it and not shy about letting folks know why it is that they won't do business with you. So that side hustle all the way on up to whatever it is that you're doing. You need to get a hold of yourself and recognize, as I said, on here, get ready to sip, that people are more important than things. And so these things that might be tenets in your life or things that you don't agree with about someone else's life that don't affect the way in which they treat you, and shouldn't affect the way in which you treat them, and you find yourself somehow in a place where you don't think you can show them the proper type of respect, I just want you to know that you will never achieve at the level you ought to achieve, because in this day and age, that information is going to get around, and people will know, and there will be people who choose to take their business elsewhere. And that is what is good and great about a market, and creates opportunity for that next person. And maybe in some cases, because of what people have decided is acceptable and the right thing to do, and treating folks with humanity is going to lead to some other businesses having less business, and I'm fine with that too. All right. So at the end of the day, if you are treating people the right way, and you treating yourself the right way, by treating your business in a manner that allows it to grow and evolve, then man, there's no telling how high the limit is. The limit's the sky, because you are doing things in a positive way that is potentially uplifting to all involved. But when you start to operate negatively, and you start to be exclusive, and you start to be bigoted flat out in the way that you operate, and you allow that to permeate your business, you start to make your sector smaller and less effective and less diverse, and eventually, potentially, and probably in a place where it's worthless. So that's what I have.
Amen. Mr. Wells.
Well, you heard the PhD, so I'll piggyback off that. I'll say this, and it starts with understanding, going back to what he said, basic principles. If you're in a situation and you don't value the opinions of the people that are your potential customers, if you don't respect their ability to make their own choices, essentially you're attempting to control them, and that's not going to work well in the society. Dr. Loving talked a little bit about the fact that, this environment demands that you have a level of respect. And I'll be the first to say, being a native of Selma, Alabama, I'm very glad that it does, because we've come a long way, but we also have a very long way to go. And we do need to demand some respect in terms of understanding choice and the ability for folks to kind of vote with their dollars and their feet. As we look at that, I would encourage respective business owners or aspiring business owners, whether that's in the face of having a hustle today and wanting to transfer that into something greater at some point, to really understand what that means and to think about the responsibility that you have once you make that transition. Because for a lot of us in those realms, there's no one to have those conversations, to talk about the political correctness that needs to be associated with having a brand or a business that's out front and that's responsive to a multicultural group of people, especially if your demographic is one area or another. So I would want to open ourselves to be an avenue for those folks, regardless of geography, to come to, but specifically for areas that struggle with those things. And then finally, I say this: we have come a extremely long way as a society and as a people, but race, equality, and diversity is probably going to be the leading conversation for the next 10, 20 years, because we've always avoided the hard truths that are associated with it. If you are a business, a hustle, or a brand, if you want to get ahead in this environment, confront that truth now. Deal with race, gender, ethnicity on the front. Let your supporters know how you feel about it, what you're willing to do to meet them where they are about it. And then just do just that, Arthur. Meet them where they are. Sometimes we think we need to have a grand gesture, but sometimes we just need to start, because a lot of us think that we have and we really haven't. We essentially just need to start. Let's start the process of healing one step at a time by doing the things that are requisite to be culturally responsive to the people who want to support us.
A series of pep talks is what this is, man. That's all it is. This is I say it often on here, but I say it all the time when I'm talking to Dr. Loving and DJ and other people that are part of our power circle and strategic partnerships. Is a lot of times when we talking, and I'll say it for us, we talking to ourselves. We admitted that we are procrastinators to a sense. So a lot of this is us just talking to ourselves. But I say all that to say, we appreciate all of y'all for listening. I appreciate both my co-hosts for joining me as usual on this. And please stay tuned to the after show, where if you don't know, you won't know. It's where we take a more in-depth dive into the topic and become more of ourselves, if you will. But you can find us at our respective internet domains. Dr. Loving, PhD, you can find him at ajamuloving.com. Destrian Wells can be found at dwellsconsulting.com. And I myself can be found at mmbbgw.com. And be sure that you are following the BREADren podcast on Instagram. That's at BREADren Pod, BREADREN POD. Once again, that's at BREADren Pod on Instagram and Facebook, BREADREN POD. But we're gonna wrap this episode up, and like we said, we always throw out a lot of points and stuff in the outline where we may not hit all the points, but it's to get the conversation going. It's that push, it's that pep talk for us. And if you don't remember, rewind the episode, go back and listen to Doc's outline, because there may be some necessary steps that you can take within that outline that we didn't cover. We may cover it in the after show. Who knows? We may cover it in another episode. Like DJ said, and we always say, we doing this for y'all. It's a series of pep talk for ourselves and for you. Thank you for listening. It's been another episode of the BREADren podcast. Stay tuned for the after show.